Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the green. Woo! Boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Good morning. Welcome into 5 Clubs. 2 hours on a Monday, live on Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I'm Gary Williams. In this program, whether it be 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, we love the hours. We'll take them. Always presented by Century Insurance. Business insurance is what they do. If you need to evaluate yours, do it with them. We appreciate the way they invest in golf at every level, from the first tee to the United States Golf Association to the PGA Tour, and right here at 5 Clubs, Century Insurance, right by you. With this 2 hours, we've got a lot of great viewpoints. They're going to be joining me, so we will start a Monday morning. Nothing better than waking up on a Monday and saying, what's a tee sheet look like? Now, if you're trying to get a tee time, if it's full, not a good thing. Ours is full. We got weekly winners, and every major tour was in action this week, so we will identify the weekly winners. Akshay Bhatia wins the API. He was on the program last week. We always do this gratuitous, hey, the 5 Clubs bounce. Everybody does it. You have somebody on, they win, they perform, and it's like you want credit. Did we just do that? Well, we will talk about him. It is Players Week. It is one of the great events in sports this week at the Stadium Course in Ponte Vedra Beach. So we will devote a large portion of the program to getting thoughts from people who are going to be joining me. So with that, Ewan Murray writes for The Guardian, also contributes to Sky Sports, as does Nick Dougherty. One of truly the great broadcasters, was an elite player. He made the transition quite smoothly to being on the mic. We'll get his thoughts and a lot of European perspective because, if you look at the history of this event, not a lot of Europeans have won. I don't know if they have any theory on that. Of course, Rory has won twice here pretty recently, 19, and of course last year. 5 Club rankings. Look, there are clubs open on a Monday. You know that. In all parts of the world, we will open the club because our one show of the week will get out of the way for Live From all week long. One of the great, really, programs, and not just because I'm a golf honk, because it just is. They'll be on all week. Taylor Zarzour, his program just ended on PGA Tour Radio. He's looking to get back on the mic because that's all he does. The guy has 1,000 jobs. He will join me as well, and then Arron Oberholser will be with me. He played in the Players on 4 occasions. He'll be a part of that Live From broadcast team as they will go from morning to night. They will start this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. Of course, Rich, Brandel, Paul, and the rest of the team tonight at 7 o'clock. And then finally, Players Picks with our lone show. We will make our selections for the Players Championship. But let's get back to the top of the sheet, the weekly winners. And the weekly winners, like I said, every major tour was in action this week. Presented by Golf Pride, the premier grip company anywhere in the world. We take a look at who won this past week. 24 years of age, now a 3-time winner on the PGA Tour. That's Akshay Bhatia. And then Jon Rahm, he didn't win it all last year on LIV, but he was dominant in Hong Kong, so he gets a win. And whether you want to attribute momentum or form or anything, look, I think wins are very important. Contextualize them any way you want. He was going to be a favorite at the Masters. He now adds a win in Hong Kong to his resume. And then finally, we were lucky enough to be at the James Hardie last Wednesday, and Zach Johnson was making his debut successfully. He wins the James Hardie Invitational on PGA Tour Champions. We will mention before we're done here, Korn Ferry Tour winner, the winner in Puerto Rico. The leaderboard at the Puerto Rico Open looked like, I thought I was watching the future Masters in Dothan, Alabama. That's how many young guys had a chance to win. So speaking of leaderboards, let's go from Golf Pride, which again, when it comes to the offerings in your bag, they offer more. And I mean through the bag. A couple years ago, it was the reverse taper putter grip series, which I use. Best grip I've had, best materials. Now they've just introduced zero taper. Golf Pride. Any club in your bag should be gripped with Golf Pride products. So let's get to the API Signature Series event. Before that squall came through on Friday, That golf course was getting fiery. There was no friction on the greens. They got a little rain. They couldn't complete the third round. Leaders had to go back out, had a couple holes to play in the morning on Sunday, and Akshay Bhatia inched himself closer to Daniel Berger. And by the end, he chased him down. So let's take a look at the leaderboard of the Arnold Palmer Invitational in a playoff. It's Akshay Bhatia. He makes par on that first playoff hole. Daniel Berger, who managed to get it on the green from what was, according to Bones, a very average lie. I thought it was a terrific shot he hit. He had an excess of 100 feet, couldn't two-putt. So that one's going to sting. There is no doubt. But look, whatever solace you want to take, it's encouraging. It's been a while. Daniel Berger, he took the lead around lunchtime on Thursday. He didn't relinquish it until Akshay Bhatia made the par in the playoff to win. Ludwig Åberg, that's encouraging. Cameron Young, they both tied for third. Colin Morikawa, his great play continues. He is going to be uttered a lot by people making picks to win the Players this week. Sahith Theegala, very good season continues for him, tied for sixth. Russell Henley in defense of his title last year. Minwoo Lee all at 10 under par. And then a couple of the host of players who finished in a tie for ninth. Harry Hall, Ricky Fowler. Ricky, who has been so good to the Arnold Palmer Invitational, locking up his logo with the Arnold Palmer umbrella. And Harry Hall, one of the best putters on the PGA Tour. They get to 8 under par in a tie for ninth. So these signature series events get us the best players. And Akshay Bhatia, whether he won this event or not, and he was doing this even last year because really by the middle of last year, his name was being kicked around. It didn't advance to the point that you felt like he was going to be the last man out when it came to the Ryder Cup at Bethpage. But I think not only based on the fact that he won yesterday, if you look at what was the most deficient part of his game, and that is the putter, and I will say this, and I'm going to do this as effectively, as succinctly, and as fairly as I can with respect to the way that he putts in just a moment. He putted exceptionally well this week, but it's not an aberration. From 183rd in putting a couple of years ago in 2023 to significant statistical progress in 24, in 25, and then he has one of the great putting weeks you're ever going to have, in addition to the fact that he chased in Daniel Berger after going out in 38. And in the grander scheme of things, Akshay Bhatia is somebody who makes you think about maybe one of your favorite poems, Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And it's not a road that has never been taken, but it's the idea of, and I'm paraphrasing, two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled. And it was uttered by Robin Williams in the movie Dead Poets Society, less traveled, not frequently traveled. He went the route that most people don't, particularly American-born players, not using the college system, opening himself up for other people to tell him what's best for his life. As I say around here, I don't do that. I try to make good decisions for my own, and I'm not 100% effective in that department. I'm certainly not going to tell somebody else, you should do that. You can make recommendations, and I understand those who said, why would you skip college? College golf has never been more competitive. You have opportunities to play professional events, but he decided, I'm not going to do that. And so he started a full-time job as a teenager. And I don't want to say that it was a particularly rocky road, but as a three-time winner now at the age of 24 and somebody who is showing up more frequently on leaderboards, including being the 54-hole leader out at Pebble Beach, Akshay Bhatia is proving that, look, the idea of when you get at a starting line and you look to your left and you look to your right and you're going, you know what, I got to keep up with him. No, you don't. It's your race. The whole point is to just keep running. And that's what he's done. And now he has run at a very consistent pace to the highest reaches of men's professional golf. Now let me get back to the putting part, because I don't want anybody to interpret this as me casting doubt. I don't have any idea. But when the anchor ban was instituted 10 years ago, I cannot believe it has been 10 years, It was the idea that you can't fix the club to any part of your body. And I'm not suggesting he is. But my question is, how is that enforced? Because there is very little daylight. And when somebody starts showing up on leaderboards on a regular basis, the last thing I want for him is for people to call him what some people on these cesspool platforms are, which I am not going to do, because I don't know. And I'd like to believe no. And I don't think so. But my question is, whether it's the PGA Tour or whether it be the R&A or the United States Golf Association, what is the procedure of enforcement? Because one thing I do know, and it doesn't mean he is, and it doesn't mean because the other guys provide so much daylight, like Adam Scott and Lucas Glover, that we know they're not. But he's a very slender guy. And so his shirt naturally blouses, so he's got material away from his body. He would have to wear something smaller than a small, which I'm not unfamiliar with, to get something that would be taut to his body. And so here he is now winning golf tournaments, and it's not like he's won 3 times this year, but it's a sticky wicket. And again, let me say it again, I'm not saying it, but I don't know. The idea that if you take it out, no one's going to be able to find out an effective way to do it away from your body. Look, these guys are freaks. They will find a mousetrap. And Lucas Glover did it, and certainly Adam Scott, who still is a competitive guy, did it. But the larger point is, again, for Akshay Bhatia to take the path, very rarely traveled, and to find his footing in such a significant way, he is a freakish talent. He's like that wire that gets loose that's still electrified, and you're looking at it, he's twitchy as hell. And he did something that most players are not capable of doing, hitting it all over the lot and still managing to win. He was arguably the worst driver in the field of the golf ball. But when you make everything, it's amazing how it is an ointment for other things. So 2 weeks in a row, and again, last week at the Cognizant was a 2-car pileup initiated by Shane Lowry. Yesterday, it was kind of like Daniel Berger's tire was losing air, and eventually he slid into the guardrail. The guy held the lead for the entire event. And I honestly thought that what he did on 18 in regulation, I thought it was a great byplay between him and his caddy, and he makes the gritty 12-footer for par. Thought he hit a very good second, very hard green to 2-putt from 107 feet. All right, we take our first break. Ewan Murray is going to join me, as is Nick Dougherty, in this hour. Second hour, Arron Oberholser, Taylor Zarzour. We will also open up the club on a Monday morning. Why wouldn't we? We only work one day this week. That's not factually true. And then, of course, we will also have our picks for the players live on Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. It's Players Week. Great week. Great to have you with us on 5 Clubs. We're back right after this. Back in on a Monday, it is Players Week. We have 2 hours for you live here this morning on Golf Channel, also Hour 1 on PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. I'm very lucky to be outfitted by the premier luxury brand and have for 16 years. Whatever it is that you need, they've got it in your life, in your wardrobe at Peter Millar and petermillar.com. All right, joining me now, I made the trek up the glorious I-4 from Orlando to I-95 to Ponte Vedra Beach. Writing for The Guardian. It's going to be interesting to get his viewpoint, especially primarily the European viewpoint, and that is Ewan Murray. Thank you. You made it there comfortably. You've done a nice job decorating your room there in Ponte Vedra Beach. How you feeling?
I'm a bit jaded, Gary, but good to join you. Glorious isn't the word I would use to describe the I-4, but you guys have different perspectives to me.
Jaded. Who isn't jaded on a Monday morning? Whatever it is that you do, even if you had a great weekend. I'm curious, what was the first Players that you attended?
Oh, that's made me think. 14, 15 years ago. I mean, it's changed spot in the calendar since then. The event has grown massively since then. It wasn't a major then, and it's not a major now. That's the consistent thing, but we might come on to that.
No, I concur with that point for sure. Do you remember what your first impression was, not just of the golf course, the entire presentation, and has that impression and opinion been altered at all in the time that you've been going back?
Yeah, I mean, this event has got bigger and better over the years, and I think certainly in recent years it has scaled up quite significantly, where it has become, I think, by far the biggest event on the PGA Tour. I think obviously it was always a significant tournament. It's a wonderful venue, but I think there's been a real dedicated effort to make the Players bigger and make Sawgrass more impressive for players and visitors. Certainly post-COVID, I would say, and that is noticeable every time we come back. It's a first world problem, but the traffic getting in and out of the golf course hasn't got any easier. But in general, the event I've seen it exponentially grow over the last few years.
The golf course, it's interesting. For Americans, when this was built, it was, for Pete Dye, who is very provocative, very challenging. He challenges sensibilities. You know how it is. Americans love to go to your part of the world and play all those great golf courses where they fall in love with the ground. The ground at the stadium course, when it gets on the ground, all you do is your heart races faster and faster. It's very aerial. It's very tactical. What do you think is the most redeemable aspect of the stadium course?
That's a good question. I think visually, it's a stunning golf course. I think it looks great. But there is a love-hate relationship, I think, with a lot of players. I think that's fair to say. And they say it every year, they'll say it again this year. If you're just a little bit off, this place can seriously punish you. I think the 17th hole is the stadium hole, the famous hole. I'm not as hot on that hole as a lot of people are. I get the drama around it. I get how it looks. It's a great theatre, especially on Sunday. But that hole at that stage of a golf tournament, I think, can be a little bit crazy golf-ish. I do have that contention. But otherwise, I think the course, it presents very well. It looks great. But it is interesting that a lot of golfers, it's fair to say, maybe like a lot of Pete Dye venues, it does split opinion among the leading players in the game. And guys who are not quite at it this week are going to find that that's exposed quite brutally.
Yeah, Ewan, I think what you said about, some like it, some don't. For what it's intended to serve, I think the fact that whether it be fans or players who take sides actually is a redeemable thing, because it makes it, that's a talking point alone, including what you just said about 17. I think a lot of people would be able to digest that hole more comfortably if it was the 5th hole or the 11th hole, as opposed to the second to last hole of not only the round, but of the championship. Let me ask you about Rory. Look, we know what we know, which is not a lot about him tweaking his back. Let me just start there with that disclaimer, knowing what we don't know. Any concern, or is that just the concern because we don't know?
Well, there has to be concern because it's very, very unlike Rory McIlroy to withdraw from a golf tournament. That's the first time since 2013 at what was the Honda Classic, if you remember the kind of dramatic backdrop to that, toothache and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm right in saying a few years earlier at the Nedbank in South Africa, he had food poisoning and withdrew. But apart from that, this is not something that Rory McIlroy typically does, which in partly is a tribute to his fitness, but also a tribute to the fact that he will play through most niggles and knocks, as all golfers get. So the fact that he felt he couldn't play in the third round at Bay Hill is significant in itself. However, I do think, and the initial chat suggested, that it was largely precautionary, with Sawgrass on the horizon, with the Masters on the horizon, and he didn't want to do himself, potentially more damage by playing in that third round. So fingers crossed, because to me, Rory was in great spirits last week. I thought he played very, very well. I was with him on the back nine on Friday. I thought his game was in a good spot, and this is a very important period for him in the year. So fingers crossed for him and for the tournament But ultimately, Gary, with backs and back injuries, we never quite know. So we're all relying on that just settling down between the weekend and Thursday morning.
Yeah, again, my opinion is based on intuition, and you kind of said what I think is that it's precautionary. I honestly think if it was the players, he would have dug in and maybe continued. And because we're on the front end of what's in front of all of them, I think it's precaution. I certainly hope it is just that. Him having won this, Ewan, twice, nobody has won this championship 3 times there. Jack won the event 3 times before it got there. And we've focused our conversation about him, about majors for the last 10 years in the absence of winning one. And then he wins and completes their career Grand Slam, whether it be this week, at some point wins a third. What does it do to the overall kind of breadth of his resume if he adds a championship for the 3rd time and who knows, maybe a 4th before it's all done at a place like that?
Well, listen, bluntly, it doesn't make as much of a difference as winning more major championships. And I think
agreed.
we would acknowledge that. And again, we could go into that debate about where the player sits. But what I do think it is the kind of thing that he will aim for now. He's in this fresh territory in his career where the Masters has been won, the Grand Slam has been won. He waited so long for these things to happen. So what he then has to do is set new goals, set new objectives. He's touched on this. Why not win the Grand Slam twice? Open Championships in Andrews, US Open Pebble Beach. But of course, winning the Players' Championship more times is then the kind of thing that he will set his eyes on as a target. We both agree it wouldn't be the same as winning further majors, and despite what discussion might happen this week, it won't become like that. But of course, when you're a double Players' Championship winner, the kind of thing that would motivate Rory is saying, right, let's elevate this again. Let's make it 3 times, 4 times. And these are the sort of goals he has to set now in this, what is a very exciting, but a fresh chapter in his career stage.
Yeah, I'm with you. That number, the major number, is always the lead number. But these barroom discussions about when you start to look at the hierarchy historically, I think whether it be FedEx Cup titles, being the linchpin of a European Ryder Cup team during a dominant period, players is bold type. And in that nuanced conversation of how is somebody 9th and somebody 10th, or I think that these are, and the other thing to me, Ewan, is reflective of his evolution. This golf course is a tactical golf course that I don't think people would have associated with him when he became who he became. And I think it's reflective of him refining himself, shaping shots in a way, and figuring out a Rubik's Cube, which I don't think that people thought would agree with him initially, which I think in the long term is going to be beneficial to the conversation about where he falls all time. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, to expand your point, the barroom debate in the UK and Ireland would be who's the greatest European golfer of all time or the modern era. Now, Faldo has 6 majors, which is more than Rory. But I would argue Rory's Grand Slam places him above Faldo, yes, because the Grand Slam shows you can pass every exam in golf. So that's an extension of the point you made. Sawgrass, I think it's fair to say at first, wasn't probably Rory's cup of tea, but his game has developed, his game has been refined. And I think one of Rory's, if not his greatest professional strength, is that there's now no examination in the game that he won't relish, he won't meet head on, and he cannot pass. And his development with Sawgrass, I think, is proof of that.
It's interesting, Europeans and kind of the birth of not only how good they became in the Ryder Cup was, in the 80s. And Sandy Lyle won this championship just a couple of years, 1987, at this stadium course. He already was a major. He would win the Masters the following year. And then no other European, Ewan, won this event until Sergio in 2008, who has a great record there. Do you have any theory as to why Europeans, and again, it doesn't, there maybe not be as many Europeans in this as you would see even in a short Masters field or Open Championship fields, but do you have any theory as to why the Europeans for a long time and look, Faldo contended several times, even Seve had a couple of top 7s, finished 3rd once. Any theory as to why?
No, I mean, that was a great era. That was a golden era, including for major championships. And if you look at things like the Masters, there was a long run, too long a run where European golfers didn't do so well after that golden spell that you talk about. No, I can't pinpoint that. I think sometimes you get these freakish runs and freakish spells in golf. And funnily enough, I was thinking about the course last week at Bay Hill, which seemed to me, looking at the leaderboard, it favoured American golfers. Now, I know Rory's situation, as we spoke about, was different, but a lot of the big European players struggled last week. And I thought, well, if you're involved in the US Ryder Cup setup going forward, you might look at somewhere like Bay Hill and think, why does that favour American players just by looking at the board and where the guys finish? So I've leapt courses from the one you talk about, Gary. It's because I can't give you a precise answer as to why the stadium course in Sawgrass has gone through those spells of looking pro-European and then decidedly not so. Also the fact, to be honest, that the game changed. The game became far more global, where you had the influence of a lot of other players, not European or American, who could come here and contend. That was a factor. But it is fair to say that for a long spell, and again, I think now actually it's become an American or rest of the world dominated course as opposed to one that Europeans could feel very, very at home with.
Yeah, to your point, you saw the likes of Steve Elkington win there a couple times, Nick Price, of course, as well. There were a lot of other representation of a lot of other global players outside of Europe. Last thing, I'm just curious, we expect to hear something significant with respect to the framework and structure of the PGA Tour, particularly the schedule this week. As it relates to the impact or effect on the DP World Tour, is there anything you think we're going to hear that will, by extension, create a conversation of the impact that will have on the DP World Tour?
Well, Gary, I hope so, because I sometimes feel that the DP World Tour and the essential global element of golf is forgotten in discussion in the United States, and I think that's a pity. So what I hope for is that the significance of the Scottish Open is preserved, the Irish Open is preserved, the BMW PGA at Wentworth is preserved, and that these big events in Europe have their place. And I think there's a way to do that around what schedule Brian Roll-Up and the PGA Tour want to implement. But I think sometimes a flaw in the US scene in golf and the PGA Tour is that it can be too American-centric. I know they help the DP World Tour significantly financially, but I think there should be a bigger emphasis placed on providing the biggest events in Europe with the platform they deserve. Because I think the golfers would benefit from playing in a more global schedule as well. So I think the tours should work together a bit more collaboratively than is the case at present.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've advocated for more co-sanctioned events. I think there should be more representation of DP players at the Players. And in turn, if you're not already otherwise exempt in the BMW PGA, I think there's a way to execute reciprocity that is beneficial to both. Listen, thank you for transitioning from Orlando to Ponte Vedra Beach, giving your thoughts on a Monday. I look forward to seeing you down there later this week. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Take care.
Okay. That is Ewan Murray, writer for The Guardian. When we continue, Nick Dougherty from Sky Sports, somebody who covers this game as well as anybody. His thoughts a little bit later on. Taylor Zarzour, Arron Oberholser. 2 hours on a Monday, starting Players Week here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM. We're back right after this. Back on 5 Clubs, live on a Monday. It is Players Week, live on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. And this segment brought to you by Century Insurance, their investment in golf at all levels. And of course, their business is business insurance. Evaluate yours with them. Century Insurance, they want to be right by you. He too enjoyed a stress-free, delightful drive on a Sunday night up I-4 from Orlando to Ponte Vedra Beach. He has not outfitted his room as nicely as Ewan Murray. Nick Dougherty of Sky Sports, 3-time winner on the European Tour. Good morning, my friend. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Already squeezed a little gym session in before speaking to you guys. So life is good, mate. What
a grinder you are. How fun was that when you got like tractor trailers passing you on the right side under the cover of darkness? That was fun, wasn't it?
The driving experience in the States, but particularly in Florida, is special. And I thought it's the holy grail of sights to be seen when on the road.
Yeah, people who think like the Housewives of Scranton, Pennsylvania is reality television. No, I-4 on a Sunday night, that's reality TV. You know, I was saying to you and the Europeans, and I'll get your thoughts overall about the guys who were there. Sandy Lyle, when he won in '87, you were 5 years old. And I think that the event, look, it was in its infancy there. It was a little bit over a decade old as an event. I'm not going to ask you if you remember it, but what was your first impression of the players, either when you started to watch it and then you started to understand that this is a big event, it's an important event, but do you remember first recollections of wanting to view the event?
I sure do, and it was always one of my favourite ones to watch. I mean, some of my best memories of being a kid in this game and being inspired, you know, to try and follow a career in the professional game was watching PGA Tour coverage on Sky Sports, because it's always been there. And of course, in the UK, it's a great time. It's on at night. So you have your dinner and then you sit in front of the telly and watch it. And for me, that one in particular, and it's not winners of it, I remember moments. And it's not necessarily the winners of it, it's 17. I mean, in the UK, and it still is to this day, whenever I see people when I get home, what people want to talk about is, oh, how about that on 17? Oh my goodness, he made a 7 there when he was only one off the lead. Or like, oh my God, what a hole-in-one that was. And it's always around that theatre because it is unique in our sport. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people think it's a great hole. I personally think it's an amazing hole. But for me, as much as that whole golf course, and I played it for the first time, Gary, actually, a couple of weeks ago when I was up there working at the studios. I qualified to play the Players, or would have played it in 2008, but sadly that was when my mum passed away, so I couldn't play. At the time, I thought, of course, I'm going to play 15 or 20 of these things because I was a master of the universe in my mid-20s. Right. Of course, life didn't work in that straight line. So I never got to play it. So I experienced it. I know it like the back of my hand from watching. I know it from covering it. But I played it for the first time. It's such an amazing golf course across all 18 holes, the questions it asks. But the one that always takes the headlines is 17.
I asked Ewan this, and I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently. When the Europeans started to not only win the Masters, and I don't want anyone to interpret this that I'm making this about major status. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just curious, at a time when, whether it be Seve for his genius, he was the best player at Augusta National in the 80s. Sandy won it in 88. And then from Olazabal to Langer to Faldo to Woozy, the dominance of Europe and all the Masters wins, I have a theory as to why I think they were better suited there than to the stadium course. Do you have any theory as to why? It's not just that golden age. It's then following that. Sergio was the next winner after Sandy in '87. That was 2008. What do you think about that?
Well, I think some of it, for me, the main reason is supply and demand. It's if you look back to 1987, I believe there were 5 or 6 Europeans in the field, and they were amazing, to be fair. And it was an era when they were knocking off those wins, especially at Augusta. But also in Opens in particular. It was 2 majors in particular that we dominated, or in that era, that golden era of golf, which also inspired the generations to come after. That's all our memories growing up watching, for me, Faldo doing what he did. But then you got to remember also small field at Augusta, great field, but smaller field, lots of Europeans, plenty of Europeans getting the opportunity to tee it up. Less so back then. The route to the PGA Tour was murky in terms of it wasn't so clear. They didn't have things in place like they do now. I believe this week there's going to be about 22 Europeans in that field, which is the smallest field we've seen at the Players as well. It's shrunk down. So 1 in every 6, 1 in every 5 to 6 players is going to be a European. Having more players and the depth of talent like we do now in these events means it's more likely we're going to get someone at the end of the week with the trophy. They're not all Seves, they're not all Faldos or Langers or Woozys or Lyles, or, you know, but there's more of them and they can really play. And we see that week in, week out on tour. The depth of talent means that, sure, there's favourites in the modern day game, but we're not surprised when Bhatia is the man last week. I mean, yeah, absolutely. On his week, when he plays his best, he could win. And you could say that's the same for pretty much most of the Europeans that get that opportunity. So for me, the main reason was it's a bigger field and there were less Europeans in it. And as you said, they had close calls. It's not like those guys, well, they never cracked the top 20. Yet they did. They came close tons of times. But there's only one winner, isn't there? And it just happened that at Augusta we had our fair share, and I think there at TPC Sawgrass maybe less so. I mean, I think it leans more into ball striking. I think you've got to be a great driver of the golf ball. I think it tests all parts of the game. There is a feel of Augusta in terms of the shot making, maybe leans a little bit more into what a lot of the Europeans grew up with, because, you know, the ability to move the ball, the iron play required to be successful at Augusta National, the greens can be a bit of an equaliser there at Augusta as well, because they're so difficult. And we think predominantly better putters back in the day were Americans, especially when playing in the US. So there's lots of little nuggets that maybe lead us down that road, but the reality is it's hard to win. And I think we have as much chance now as ever because we have more players with a chance.
No, I think what you said about not only number of players, but also it's not like they showed up there and didn't have a chance or didn't care. Faldo finished second. Olazabal finished third. Seve finished third. Langer finished second twice and a third. They were close. That comes down to a shot or two. Rory has won this twice. And in addition to the 2 wins, he had a 3-year stretch where he was starting to figure it out, 13, 14, 15, all top 10s. What is it about his evolution overall, but his understanding of what is required there that is reflective of somebody who embodies that success is always under construction, and that in totality, he may be better now in his mid-30s than he was, 7, 8 years ago in terms of the physical part of it?
I think that's a great question. I think there is a very big difference in the Rory now to the one that, let's go back to his pomp, you might say, when it looked like he was going to win all the majors.
Yes.
So 2014, he was a brilliant front foot golfer. So if you said to Rory, you push a little harder on that accelerator today, Rory, he loved that. Green light, yes, please. And no one's better. And I still think probably no one is better when he gets permission to put the foot down. But I think what he's done across the years is what you'd expect every great player to do, every golfer really who does it for a career. Your golfing IQ improves, your golfing intelligence improves. And around like TPC Sawgrass, the question is, it's there. It gives you the opportunity to chase, but it also very much tells you from experience when you watch it or when you play that golf course, if you push and you get it wrong, there is going to be a piper to be paid. And Sawgrass does that better than most, whether it be from the tee, whether it be with the approach play. 17's the perfect example of it. Discipline around TPC Sawgrass is imperative. And as much as it does still find low scores around that golf course, there's big numbers waiting at every single corner. And Rory has been that guy more so than Scottie Scheffler. If we're going to separate the two, I think one of the things that Rory continuously points towards, because I think it's front and centre for him in what's evolved for him as a golfer, is knowing when to pull the trigger, knowing when to play, as Tiger did through his entire career, aggressively conservative or conservatively aggressive, whichever way you want to put it. Picking smart targets but being fully committed to him is what it means. Scottie is the best in the game by a margin in this modern day era. Tiger was the best in the game by a margin in his era. And I think Rory, because he's smart and because he wants to win plenty, and he does, has evolved into becoming a player that does that more often. Maybe not quite to Scottie's level, but I think because of it, he's more polished. When he has to push, he's the best in the biz. But he also knows that I can still win by playing smart. Every flag doesn't have to mean it's a green light.
Yeah, Nick, it's fascinating to me, all athletes, they get tagged. And I think Rory was tagged as the guy, a thoroughbred horse racing kind of analogy. He liked clean air. If he was at the rail at the top of the stretch, you weren't going to catch him. But if he got nudged to the outside, he couldn't find his way to the line. His record in the U.S. Open, even though he hadn't won since 11, is a sign of a grinder. The idea of a guy willing to take one in the chops and dig in. And I think that is a redefining component to him that is admirable. Let me ask you about Ludwig. And it's not just because he had a good week this past week. He's just starting his 3rd full season on the PGA Tour. Give me your assessment of where he is at 26.
I think it's interesting. So I chatted to him a little bit last week about the sickness. Is weird, right? 2 years in a row, same time of year, same thing. And he's checking some bits and bobs out, doing some tests, maybe some gut stuff going on there. And those little things do get in the way. the bit that was always tough with Ludwig is that as much as, I mean, I dare say, almost Tiger level, because of what he did when he first hit the scene and how quick he won at the RSM, he won on the DP World Tour, he turned pro in June, he's in the Ryder Cup in September. You know, I mean, it doesn't happen. That's a lot of expectation from the outside, sure, but also internally, because he knows he's that good. Luke Donald, I remember chatting in Detroit, and I chatted to him, said, what do you think of this guy? Because he played with Ludwig, and he went, he's going to be a generational talent. One round of golf. Also, he's been watching, obviously, but like played with him, and he said he's different. And all of those things put a lot of pressure on a player to go ahead and deliver on it. And we know in the modern day game, it's really hard. Scottie Scheffler, Rory to a degree as well, they make it look like, well, yeah, because I'm the best, so I will win a lot of tournaments, because they do, but it's not that simple. Golf is not that simple. It doesn't always go to plan. It's volatile, it's unpredictable, it's unfair, it's all of these things. So being highly decorated and winning all of the time doesn't tend to happen. And I think that perhaps has been a little bit of an obstacle. When you look at the makeup of his game, dropped off a little bit. He went from being in those first sort of 7 or 8 months as a professional, probably the best driver on tour at a time when you couldn't take that mantle from McIlroy or Scheffler. He's been off the boil a little bit. Iron play dropped off a little bit as well, certainly in recent times. What was great to see last week was he led proximity. He was third in terms of strokes gained approach. It's a body of work for 1 week, but as you've seen across his results as well, Gary, he's got better each week this year after being poorly at the very start of it. I feel like we're going to get a nice run from Ludwig through this season. I think he's going to be back on the horse. Remember, it was only a couple of years, 2024, he was second in the Masters as well. Yeah. Easy to forget these things when it's not pictures of guys with trophies. We think, yeah, he hasn't done anything, has he? He sort of has. Last year wasn't his best. I expect to bounce back in 2026.
All right, before I let you go, give me 2 Europeans. Let's put Rory in his own category that you're bullish on this week.
Okay. I'm going to go for a couple of great iron players. I could easily lean into Oberg, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because of the reasons that I saw last week. I do think he's going to play well this week. I think Shane's going to bounce back. I thought he might do it immediately, a heavy one, to just slide by. I like the way he dealt with it as well. I mean, almost it was the outside agencies making it into something else. I think Shane's quote was, "It's like someone's died out there at Bay Hill," from like how it was being talked about. That would have stung. That would have really stung. The double-doubles down the stretch there at the PGA National to lose out. But the reality is he's playing great golf, dusts himself off, back up again. One of the best iron players is going to be imperative around TPC Sawgrass. I think Shane's going to have a great opportunity, and I think Sepp Straka, albeit it was disappointing Sunday at Bay Hill, great start to the season, brilliant ball striker from the tee with the irons. That'd be my 2 picks for Europe.
Nick, as always, I greatly value the time. I look forward to seeing you this week. Thank you.
Pleasure, Gary, always.
All right, that is Nick Dougherty, Sky Sports 3-time winner on the DP Tour, the European Tour. Those were winning words presented by Century Insurance. Their business is business insurance. Evaluate yours with them. We come back, we're opening the club. Yeah, it ain't even 9 a.m. in the United States. Who cares? The club is open, and next hour, another hour for you, Taylor Zarzour, Arron Oberholser, more of the American perspective, global perspective. We leaned in on Europe in this hour 1. It is Players Week. Great to have you with us. We're back right after this. Welcome back in on a Monday here on 5 Clubs Live on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar, sport coat, tie, shirt, pocket square. Very lucky to not only be outfitted by them for 16 years, but knowing that they have become the premier lifestyle brand. That means whatever it is that you have in your life that you need to go to, from the most formal to the most casual and everything in between, it's Peter Millar, all their retail stores, and of course their website, petermillar.com. We normally do it on a Monday, but why not? It's Monday morning. Open the club. Club 5, our hot list when it comes to the men's game. And we start at number 5. And this guy, He looks like he would be very comfortable in the club. First time in it, Akshay Bhatia, and it is not just the win. Started the year with 2 missed cuts, and then he started to build, and he got the 54 lead at Pebble Beach, squandered it to a degree, but he crosses the line, 31 on the inward 9 yesterday. Bay Hill gets in the playoff. Akshay Bhatia in the club at number 4. And again, it's their production level. Jacob Bridgman's worst result this year is a tie for 18th. You add to that a couple of top 10s in addition to winning at Riviera at the Genesis. He's there at number 4. At number 3, also a winner, breaking back through for the first time a couple of weeks ago. He adds a top 5 this past week at the API. He had a sluggish start to the year. Colin Morikawa at number 3. At number 2, the only multi-time winner on the PGA Tour so far this year, and that's Chris Gotterup. He was sniffing around the first page of the leaderboard heading into the weekend, was kind of on the periphery, and then he had a very odd kind of off Sunday because he doesn't usually have bad Sundays. 64-64 in his 2 wins this year on Sundays, and again, still he tied for 18th, shooting 76. And at number 1, here's the thing about the captain of the club. The reason why he's in the VIP section like Leo is that he's got a lot on his resume. And it's not like he's floundering. A tie for 24th for Scheffler is his worst result in a year. In a year. And he had 3 doubles as well. So even though Scottie doesn't club, he's clubbing a lot here on 5 Clubs. That is your Club 5. All right, hour 2 live on Golf Channel coming up. Taylor Zarzour with me, Arron Oberholser as well. We got our picks. Nice to have you with us. Great week in the game of golf. It is Players Week. We're back right after this. Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the green. Woo! Boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Welcome back in. It is 5 Clubs live on Golf Channel here on a Monday, our 2-hour program. It's great to have you with us as we begin Players Week, and we will step out of the way for Live From. They will begin their programming week later on this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and then, of course, prime time every single night with Rich Lerner, Brandel Chambly, Paul McGinley, Todd Lewis, the rest of their great crew. I'm Gary Williams, and, of course, this program is brought to you by Century Insurance. We appreciate them investing with us, with what we do, but also what they do at every level in the game of golf. First Tee, USGA, PGA Tour. But what they do every day is business insurance. Evaluate yours with them at Century Insurance. They want to be right by you. Taylor Zarzour will be with me. He, of course, has his program on PGA Tour Radio every day, Monday through Friday, the starter at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, but also a big contributor hosting on PGA Tour Live. He'll be a part of that enterprise this week as they go wall to wall for the players as well. And then, speaking of Live From, Arron Oberholser, you'll hear his thoughts throughout this week on the Live From desk. Winner on the PGA Tour, played in 4 Players Championships. Excited to get his views on what's transpired so far this season, but also I'm curious what his game plan was the first time he saw it. Did it evolve at all? The difference between March and May. So Arron, at the bottom of the hour, our picks from the whole team to come as well. And I know that the conversation, they'll probably have it tonight. It'll be spirited with respect to the major. I don't have, it's not that I don't have the time, I actually do with the second hour. To me, it's more about looking at what this is right now, how it's become what it's become. Because the good fortune of covering all sports before, my vision was narrowed in terms of my job to golf starting about 15 years ago. Lucky to see Indy 500s and Daytona 500s and Super Bowls and Final Fours and all the majors. This is one of the great sporting events that we have. And the evolution of it all makes me think about when it was born, because it was born at a time when the golf course was built, the construction starting and opening right at the beginning of the decade of the 80s, and the first event being held there in 1982. if you consider that it was just a little bit more than a decade after the players broke away, creating their own division from the PGA of America. So the event, born in '74, kind of meandered around to different venues. Thankfully, the good fortune of having Jack win it 3 times doesn't hurt the brand. But then it went there in 1982. And let me just say something a little bit in defense of the decade for those of you that came far after it. If you want to mock the hair, if you want to mock the Jordache and Vidal Sassoon designer jeans, hey man, I got no defense. If you want to take shots at the music of the 80s, look, I went to school every day walking to George Washington Junior High School listening to the Police. There was nobody cooler than they were. And you know what? I'll stand and back up the likes of The Clash and Men at Work and Peter Gabriel. And my coming of age moment going to Bruce Springsteen at Giant Stadium in 1985, 2 nights before I headed off to Vanderbilt, I thought I was a grown-up. And I actually bought one of those sleeveless t-shirts. And boy, I didn't fill it out very well. But that decade also came at a time when design of golf courses, especially like special projects like we now see everywhere, had dried up altogether. It was all about sell that dirt to build a house. And if you build 18 holes, I don't know. If they're good, if it's accidental, great. I just want to sell the dirt to put people there. I call it the Dark Ages. But you know who came along? Darth Vader. And you know what? Ben Crenshaw actually called him that. The first time after he played the stadium course, he said, "This is Star Wars golf, designed by Darth Vader." Pete Dye was perfect for not only that place, but for the time. And in that decade, he built PGA West, which was also very provocative, the Long Cove Club, also the Honors Course, which had a refinement to it and a genteel nature. It was not certainly as disorienting as the stadium course. And one other thing about that decade, it was when Jack Nicklaus gave us the moment that we've dined out on for 40 years. He gave us the '86 Masters, and yes, he won 2 majors in 1980, but he was 40 at that time, so we couldn't count on him every week. Watson won his last major in 1983. It was Seve's decade, but for a lot of people here who can be myopic and territorial, he wasn't us. So you didn't maybe embrace him as much as you should have. You should have, because he had it all. He had it all, including a prickly side to him as well. He was the best player of the decade. He was the best player at Augusta National during that decade. And he was also the best player on the European Ryder Cup team that came of age in that decade. But this golf course, hosting this event for the first time in '82, also had somebody who you don't need to remember how good Jerry Pate was, but he was. And he was on his way to a Hall of Fame career with an orange golf ball. He had already won a U.S. Open. And he goes there in '82 and he wins it. And he did a club twirl as good as anybody. When I say anybody, anybody. And then he does a swan dive into the lake on 18 and pushes Dean Beeman and Pete Dye into it. And you're going, that's how you baptize a place. Truly, with the water included. And then the guys who followed were also guys. Hal Sutton won the PGA over Jack Nicklaus at Riviera the same year. And Freddie Couples was right out of Central Casting as the matinee idol in '84. So they get a good start on a golf course that people are saying, God, I hate this. And that's good for business in some ways. And one last thing about the 80s. For all you youngins out there, you Utes, don't ever come calling on me about movies and things that are funny, because nothing will touch comedies of the 80s, starting with Airplane in 1980, Stripes in 1981, and soon after that, 48 Hours, Trading Places, the coming-of-age films of John Hughes, that's right, including 16 Candles and Breakfast Club, and I can go on and on. Risky Business. Nothing will touch comedies in the 80s. And I think that the players, that's why their identity is so special. There's nothing like it. They're in a category of one. It's a great category to have. So yes, the conversation is going to be inundated with Is it or isn't it? Because the people running the place now want to have that conversation again. And look, I'll be a party to it. I'm not saying I'm against having the conversation because that's interesting. But this week, I want to focus about how it became what it became and why it doesn't discriminate against any style or necessarily reward any style overwhelmingly. That is very endearing and rewarding to the venue itself. All right, we take a break. When we continue, Taylor Zarzour get his thoughts on a lot of things, not only about this week, but bigger picture with respect to the PGA Tour, because we expect to hear things that will be about the future, not just of this event, but of the entire structure of the property as a whole. Arron Oberholser a little bit later on. Love Hour 2 on a Monday of Players Week live on Golf Channel. This is 5 Clubs. Back with Taylor right after this. Back in Monday edition of 5 Clubs live on Golf Channel, Players Week live from this afternoon, of course in prime time, and then all day the next couple of days before the Players Championship begins on Thursday. This segment is brought to you by Peter Millar. When it comes to having choices for anything you wear, depending on whatever it is that you do, they are the premier lifestyle brand. Go to their website, petermillar.com, and of course all the retail stores that they have across the country. All right, joining me now, he's quite comfortable in the crown. He's also quite comfortable with the microphone. He'll be calling rollerball later today from the Duval County Convention Center. But when he's done with that, he'll do his show every morning on PGA Tour Radio. He'll be a part of the Players Championship broadcast on PGA Tour Live, SEC Network, play-by-play host of the Tennessee Titans. Am I missing a credit on the resume as you join me from your timeshare at the Sawgrass Marriott?
Yeah. That sounds like enough. Yeah, I was trying to show you a different backdrop since we're doing a full tour of this hotel with all of your guests here this morning and show you how the 13th hole is playing. But yes, I spend a lot of time in this hotel, and who knew that I'm supposed to pronounce it differently? I've pronounced it Marriott for years, but now it's the Sawgrass Marriott, and I've seen a number of players in here, Gary. Max Homa carrying his bag through the lobby just a little while ago. It is Players Week, and I'm excited to be here.
I know you are. As somebody who, like me, has had the great fortune of going to all these great venues, all the sports, and they all have their own color and texture and history. I think this is one of the best sporting events we have in America, to the credit of the people who run it. It's evolved. The footprint is brilliant. But the golf course itself, what do you think is the most compelling aspect of the stadium course?
Gosh, I think it is the ultimate in target golf. I think that it's like playing a tough par 3 twice on the same hole, on every hole, that you have to hit to a very exacting area off of the tee and then to an exacting area from there. You have that obviously in challenging par 3s all over the world, but it feels like every single shot, Gary, requires such precision here. And it's why people like me and everyone else watching right now gets very frustrated playing this golf course, is because if your game is loose, if you're not practicing it all of the time, you'll be exposed at a place like this. Look, it's a bucket list course for all of us. Everybody should want to play the 17th hole. The juices flow just about unlike any other place you could play in the game. The 12th at Augusta National, the 7th at Pebble would be on that list in our country. And the 17th at Sawgrass at the stadium course should be on that list too. But the rest of the golf course, Gary, really beats you up. Honestly, that tee shot on 17 is maybe the easiest shot you'll play all day. Now, the water gets in your head, and chances are you're going to hit it there because it's in your head. But the other holes, all of the other holes, have harder shots than the one you hit on 17.
Yeah, that's backed up historically in terms of how hard or easy the 17th hole is. It's much more historically one of the easier holes on the golf course. But again, that's full field. Late on a Sunday, either one back or one ahead. Suddenly the green looks like it's about 1,600 square feet and not roughly 4,800 square feet. How about the championship? I was thinking about this, and you're the perfect person to ask this to and have the conversation on. We associate certain players with all the great events, particularly the major championships. Who is most synonymous with the players?
Yeah, you were just talking about Jerry Pate in the last segment and the orange golf ball and the great club twirl. That would be high on the list.
I agree.
I would, yeah. I mean, I want to put Ricky Fowler on there because of this is the biggest moment he had, and he's always been such a fan favorite, and that is hard to believe. That was 11 years ago. But I would still say Tiger. It's the greatest call Gary Koch ever made. It's one of the greatest calls in the history of the game. The fact that when he won that tournament in 2001, he had all of the 5 biggest tournaments at the same time. We talk often about how he had the Tiger Slam. Well, he also had the Players, and he did that in 2001, and obviously is a 2-time champion here. So I would still say it's Tiger, but it is a good question. It's not the most obvious. Like, you think of Augusta National and you think of Jack, you think of Arnold, you think of Tiger. You go to each of the other majors and you think of someone immediately. It's a little more challenging to do that, which is another reason to love this tournament, is because it doesn't necessarily favor a player. It favors the hot player. It favors the player that's in complete control of their game from tee until they're in the hole. But you can go to other places, as you know, and not necessarily have great form, and you love that golf course and just know how to play it. It doesn't matter how much you know how to play this place. You'll be exposed if you're hitting loose shots here. So I think that maybe more than a player, it isn't synonymous with one player because of just how much is required from an accuracy standpoint.
Yeah, look, better than most. And like you said, he would go on to Augusta National the next month, and then it was the Tiger Slam. And first of all, it was the fact that he hadn't won there yet. Look, it was only 2001, but he was truly the 100-year flood that had been unleashed. And he was playing with Phil that Saturday. That wrinkle to me, stalking the green, but there's a handful. So they've got this collage, which gets us to Rory, who's now part of this tapestry in a way that maybe people wouldn't have associated him with 10 years ago. And whether we have concerns about the back or not, whether it's this week or at some point, if he or Scheffler becomes the first 3-time winner there, Jack won the event 3 times before it even got there, then they are the biggest champion there. So let me ask you about Rory, and if he does this, or just overall, your thoughts about him being in a place that only a handful of others are as multi-time winners there.
Well, I think that really matters to him. I think moving forward, he's looking at things to check off of his list that haven't been done before. With all due respect to the tournaments he's already won and the quote-unquote regular tour events that are out there on the PGA Tour, I think he wants to do special things in the game that he will always savor. And I think winning the Players for a 3rd time would be on that list. But given what happened this past Saturday, Gary, at Bay Hill, and the fact that he had this gym issue on Saturday morning and had to withdraw, I need to see him practice for a couple of days here to know that he trusts himself on this golf course. Because again, unless you're totally convicted, I don't know that I see it happening for a 3rd time this week. What he did last year, that was as committed and as convicted as I've ever seen Rory McIlroy on a golf course here at TPC Sawgrass. And you have to know where it's going coming in here. As for Scottie Scheffler, Scheffler's B game is better than everybody else's, and it's why he can still scrape together a top 25 finish when he isn't feeling his best. But I called just about every single shot he hit this past week, Gary, on PGA Tour Live, and that is a frustrated fella right now. Now, maybe some of it are the greens. I don't think that he typically cares for Pinehurst number 2's greens and how fast they are. I don't know that even though he's won the tournament twice, I don't know that he cares for how fast the greens are at Bay Hill Club and Lodge. At least he was saying as much the last few days. But I don't think that he is as sure as he's been the last few years of where it's going right now. And so We do. We have more questions about the number 1 and number 2 players coming in than we typically would. You were waffling a bit, not to tease what's coming up a little bit later, but on a text chain, you were waffling a little bit about who to pick this week and made at least 2 changes on that text chain. I think one of the guys you were considering, Mr. Morikawa, might be the favorite this week because of the fact he really seems to know where it's going these days.
Okay, that is a fraudulent representation. It's about forgetfulness. It's not about waffling. I'd forgotten that I'd already submitted, but I will say I was kind of taken away in a romantic haze of Colin Morikawa just striping irons left and right. You're right about this with respect to Scheffler. Again, contextualizing it, that he's still 3rd in strokes gained total. He's actually putted very, very well. He had 3 doubles this past week. He's had 5 double bogeys already early in the season. It's his iron play. He's 88th in strokes gained approach. It's not like he's not playing from the fairway. It's not like he's hitting it all over the lot. His iron play is off by that stretch. So with respect to him, so how would you describe his season? Give me a 1-sentence synopsis of Scottie Scheffler so far in 2026.
I would say it's been an uneven start to the year, including a win. How about that? That's what I would say. Now, the bar for him, I mean, like it or not, the guy has played on one hand one of the greatest runs of 4-year, 5-year golf we've ever seen. So when all of a sudden we see a little bit less than that, then we have to call it out. I don't think it's going to last. It wouldn't surprise me this week if he won, or if he won at Augusta National, and or if he won 5-6 more times as the season continues. But I do think over the last month, he is not as comfortable hitting an iron shot right now as he was, say, this time last year. And look, form is a fickle thing. Everybody goes through that, including the best player in the game. The fact that he's not missing cuts and he's still somewhere around the top 10 these last couple of starts or over the last month just shows you how incredible he is at making a score each day. But I do see a little bit of difference so far in the start of the year. But yeah, going back to one sentence, I would say it's an uneven start to the year, including a win.
Yeah, and again, it's uneven relative to his own standard. There are players out there going, I would take an uneven year that's a win, a third, a fourth, a 12th, and a 24th. Exactly. And the 24th was his worst result in a calendar year, going back to the players last year. I get what you're saying. All right, let's talk about bigger picture stuff. How much do you think, or what specifically do you think will drive the most conversation after it's shared by Brian Rolap, who will do, whether it's 12, 15 minutes of him sharing thoughts and then fielding questions? What will be the biggest driver after that presser?
I think that it's the people that love the game so deeply and have loved watching the PGA Tour for generations. I think their nerves about how many times they're going to get to watch a PGA Tour event on a week-by-week basis or over the course of the entire year, I think that's going to be the conversation. I think that if you had skin in the game, if you had ownership of the PGA Tour, if you were an investor in it, I think that you would want a return on that investment, and you would really be listening to Mr. Rolap when he's talking about getting all the best players to play in almost all of the tournaments. In order to do that, I think you need 18 to 20 tournaments a year, as Tiger Woods has suggested. And I think that there's an uneasiness that a lot of golf fans have with that. I mean, you've expressed that. A lot of people on this platform have expressed that it'd be great to watch a golf tournament almost every single week, starting at the end of January, at least going to August. You don't want to have a week off. I think that just the questions about how many times you're going to get a PGA Tour event is going to be the carryover conversation that we're having. There's going to be a number of others. I'm a huge fan of the idea of golf owning the summer, Gary, and going to major places like New York City, going to Chicago, playing more golf in prime time, ending the season on the West Coast. I love some of those ideas. But I do think the idea of only having 18 to 22 tournaments during the PGA Tour season, maybe taking some weeks off after majors, I think that there's going to be some concern about that moving forward. And if you only go to major markets, Gary, I mean, look at NASCAR. They only went to major markets for a while, and they seem to lost some fans from that, going to the communities that really support the game. So I think if you're Greensboro or you're next week in the Tampa area or you're Harbor Town or you're one of those tournaments like the John Deere Classic in the Quad Cities, I think you're a little nervous about what's going to take place moving forward. And I really hope the PGA Tour protects some of those spots I just mentioned.
Taylor, you know, as somebody who is in that building a lot, meaning the PGA Tour, you know, media building and being around a lot of people, you have a lot of relationships there. I'm interested to see how forthcoming Brian Rolapp is for two reasons. One, I don't know how much is already in place. So the idea of what we want to do and what we are doing, that can be a sticky wicket, because if you don't get what you want, then it looks like you've underachieved. And then secondly, and more importantly, is this. When Fred Ridley at Augusta National or Mike Wan of the United States Golf Association, I can go on and on, when they do their state of their event, it's here are the strategic, methodical, subtle things that we've done. And oh, by the way, we'll see you next year. The PGA Tour goes on the following week.
Right.
And this is about the Players' Championship. So with respect to the major part, do you think that he will share the thoughts of the tour and their feelings about the status of the event before he fields a question? Or is he only going to elaborate once the question comes, which will be one of the first three?
Yeah, I think that he is going to suggest how important the Players is in his opening remarks. I would think that he would probably do that, given the marketing strategy that is around this event. And I understand it. Look, they want to create as much value as they possibly can from their flagship event. They want to be paid as much money from their broadcast partners, from their media partners, as is possible moving forward. And they know if this tournament is seen on the same line as those other four, that it should command those types of dollars. So I think that's what this is all about. Having said all of that, Gary, I'm in total agreement with Rory McIlroy. I think this tournament stands alone. I think it has its own identity. And I would be a bit nervous if you put it on the same line or bundled together, bunched up with those other four, that it might get lost a bit and it wouldn't be seen the same way that it's currently being seen. But I do understand it from a monetary standpoint, that you want to get as much value out of this as possible. And I think that's what Brian Rolapp will try to suggest Wednesday in his remarks, whether it's before anyone asks him a question or not.
Yeah, I certainly like, if my identity was I'm the only one in a category, I wouldn't want to leave that category. All right, your pick
Completely
will come.
agree.
Your pick will be disclosed at the end of this hour. You had to come swiftly. I know on your radio program you'll drag it out with your staff until the eve of the event. But beyond that, I want to give me somebody on the first page of the API, excluding the winner, that you're most bullish on, and it may be a tell that it is your winner. But who do you like based on performance last week coming into this week?
Well, you made fun of me constantly last year for all of my Russell Henley selections, who won Bay Hill last year, and he just had another top 10 finish there at the API. Look, you have to know where it's going off the tee. You have to be one of the greatest ball strikers until you get to the green. And Russell Henley is not only one of the top players in the world, he is one of the top 1, 2, 3 accurate players in the game. And so I don't want to use all of my Schefflers. I want to save some of my Morikawas. So I think that you're going to see the name Henley on the board a little later on in the show for the reasons I just referenced. Saw a lot of great form there. And let me just say one last thing as it relates to the big picture, Gary, in the game of golf. A lot of this should be on the table, trying to determine where should the players go? Should it be a major? What should we do with the summer? Leave the API alone. It is perfect. That tournament was terrific the last 4 days. I would like to see the field increase back to where the King would like it, around 120 players, and I think they will do that. But I love where it fits on the calendar. I love how hard and challenging it is, and it feels like a major championship. I just think it hits all the right marks, and I salute the Saunders and Palmer families for for the incredible job they're doing with that event. Leave that thing alone.
Yeah, Sam Saunders is a really good front man. Really is. Very, very impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with you. Hey, I look forward to being with you this week. Thank you as always.
See you here.
All right. Make room in your timeshare there at the Marriott. All right, we take a break. Arron Oberholser, he will be a big part of the Live From team, which will get underway not only this afternoon, but prime time all week long. It's one of the great weeks to really listen to commentary, opinion from that great team. He joins me next, bottom of the hour here on a Monday on 5 Clubs. Back in on 5 Clubs live on Golf Channel. It is Players Week. Great to have you with us. And this segment is brought to you by Century Insurance, our presenting sponsor. They do business insurance. Evaluate yours with them. They want to be right by you. People think that doing television, it's all glitz and glamour. And the guy who's joining me now is going to show that in full bloom, because there is nothing glitzier than a double wide on a Monday morning in Ponte Vedra Beach. Look at that set. Wow, look at that scene. Arron Oberholser, look at you.
Nothing but the best, Gary. Nothing but the best.
The double wide. Look, the intelligentsia of golf meets in double wides. And I'm telling you, I mean this, and you know this, some of the best times are in a trailer because you're kicking around, you're chewing on the meat, and then you go and you do, the light goes on and you do what you do. But that time, I know you love that time.
We have always said at Golf Channel, what we need to film is the meetings that we have and put those on air rather than some of the shows. As you know, some of the meetings, that's some of the best golf chatter that we have every week is in the meetings surrounding what we are actually going to talk about on air. And that all happens right here in the trailers.
No doubt. I was mentioning that you played in this championship 4 times. You made the cut every time. I know you wanted your performances to be better, but I'm curious, how was your game plan? Did your game plan the first year, did you struggle to kind of identify what you needed to lean into, and did it evolve at all over those 4 years?
Well, evidently it didn't evolve well enough, but I will say this: this is a golf course that you can't possibly have all the answers to, and it's much like another place that we play that every year, going back to in Augusta National. I make that kind of those similarities that are there. Between here and Augusta, because there are a decent amount of similarities, even though the design is very different. But the strategy is somewhat similar, and what the players are asked to do. They're asked to play a game of opposites to a certain extent, to where you get up on the first hole and the hole Pete Dye's showing you a cut shot, and then the second shot, even though it's with a little short iron, he's showing you a draw, and then on the second hole you stand up there and he's showing you a draw off the second hole. But then he's showing you a cut shot into the green. So that kind of hops around this entire golf course, is that this game of opposites that you have to play. And Augusta National is a lot like the same thing. I had a hard time playing that game because I had one shot. And for me to hit there and stand up and hit a controlled cut was very difficult. So I just kind of, certain fairways were a lot narrower for me because of the fact that I played a draw. Certain fairways widened up for me. So it was certain holes were very difficult for me off the tee, certain holes weren't. And same going into the greens, depending on where the flag was located. So it's just one of these golf courses that constantly keeps you off balance. And I think that it's one of the more interesting golf courses, obviously, that we play on tour. And I love coming back here, and I loved playing here, even though I never quite really truly figured it out.
Yeah, you said something that I think is a synonym for, whether it is, never figuring it out. When you don't feel like you have an answer, that I think it immediately makes you feel uncomfortable. Discomfort is right around the corner. It feels like there. So I preface those thoughts with this. Where is the underbelly? where is the part of the golf course where I'm not saying that you feel much more comfortable, but that you feel you must take advantage of over the course of the 4 days? Do you think there is a stretch that you would consider be the soft spot?
Man, that's a great question, because I was actually I've been thinking about this for years around this place. And Gary, I'm not so sure there is. There is a double bogey waiting around every swing on every corner of this on this golf course. I guess if there's one stretch, 11 and 12, 10 can be, I mean, we've seen doubles and triples on 10, and that's just a 3-wood or a hybrid and a wedge or a 9-iron. And then you get to 11 and you can make an eagle there, no problem, with 2 great shots and a great putt or chip. But you can also, we've seen doubles and we've seen triples on 11. 12, the way they've redone 12, I think it's made the golf hole a lot easier than what before they put the lake in, even with the lake on the left. But again, if you get a little too over aggressive down that left-hand side, you can make a bogey or a double on a very easy hole very, very quickly. But if you're holding my feet to the fire, I would say 11 and 12. That's what outside of that, I mean, again, there's not a 3-hole stretch on the golf course. You go, oh yeah, I can relax and I can go birdie, birdie, birdie here, hitting good shots, not great shots. It just doesn't exist out here.
Yeah, it's not, I'm not going to suggest it's like the start at Pebble where you got to feast for the first 6 to 7 holes. But I do think I would think about this. So 9, 10, 11, 12, the 5th, 7th, 3rd, and 4th easiest holes on the golf course. So you have 2 par 5s, and 9 is very interesting to me, but nonetheless, it is a real bona fide opportunity. 10 doesn't require a driver, so you play from the fairway, it's a short iron. That stretch to me, and I'm not suggesting it's, you ravage it, but if I was going to extend that, I would say it's 9, 10, 11, and 12. If you can play those 4 and 2 under, that you not have to do it, but you should be able to accomplish that.
I think I would agree with that, and I would go as far as to say that but I'll put this caveat on it. I will say that this golf course in particular, you can't take a shot off. You can't just kind of like semi-relax with a tee shot or a second shot on any of those holes. That's the thing. Is that whereas certain golf courses where you can kind of lazy one out there, you can kind of go, you never go half-hearted through a routine and your process. But I guess there are certain holes that are going to make you relax, that literally relax, and you can really let it go. That's the hard part around here, is getting yourself to relax so that you can hit the shots that you want to hit. Because in the back of your mind, if you go in that left bunker on 10, you bring a lunch pail. And if you go in the softball meadows to the right, bring a lunch pail. So there's just no relaxation on any shot. You have to have 100% focus all the time. Now, if you pull those shots off under those circumstances on those holes, you are going to be better set up, to your point.
Yeah, and 9, to me, it's the narrowest entry of a par 5 I've ever seen or played. And you can, you hit a great drive and have a reasonable iron in your hand, and then all of a sudden you're standing on your head on a chocolate drop for your 3rd, and you've thought in your mind, I can make 3 here, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, 5's good. It's all relative, but I think that's the stretch. Let me ask you this about you and your mindset. In 2006, you finished 23rd on the money list, and you were ascending in a way that was not unreasonable, that you were going to then reside inside that elite bubble. That elite bubble now seems to be more insulated than it was 20 years ago with the Signature Series. Are you concerned that the firewall being created that we think is going to be fortified even more is good, bad, or can be interesting for players going forward who are outside of that firewall?
I think it's going to be tougher for those players for sure. I'm not a fan. You know, and listen, I benefited from the World Golf Championships when we had the World Golf Championships, which we have 4 of every year. And the signature events are a little bit like those. And basically, if you were in the majors and you were in the WGCs back when I played, if you had a top 10 in a major and a top 10 in a WGC, you know, it was a kind of a self-perpetuating, self-feeding system where you weren't, more than likely, as long as you stayed upright and didn't injure yourself, you were probably going to stay inside the top 50 as long as you kept your head on straight. That's kind of what these do as well, to a certain extent, is that they're just kind of self-perpetuating. Now it's going to be tougher to break in. It wasn't as tough when I played to break into that top 50 in the world. I think it's going to be tougher for players potentially to break into that top 50 in the world. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out when this whole new schedule comes out and everything happens. But I personally would like to see 120. If you're going to do this, if you're going to cut back the fields, I think you got to add to them. So like, I don't mind having shorter fields. That's fine. You can have shorter fields, but I don't think you can have these 72 and 80 player fields. I think it's got to be minimum of 100, cut to 60 and ties, or minimum of 120, cut to what we have now, 65 and ties, and then go from there. I just think that I need cuts.
Yes.
I need to make Friday needs to be important. Friday afternoon needs to be important. You know, I watched Friday afternoon at Bay Hill because it was there was a cut, but the cuts. I think the cuts at the events, the signature events that we have cuts at, they're somewhat inconsequential in my humble opinion. I would like them to be more consequential, and I'd like to have them. I'd like them to have bigger fields.
Yeah, look, what you did for a living, one of the most admirable aspects was the rewards are the consequences that come every week. And rewards and consequences, they come twice, Friday and Sunday. And if you're not good enough for 2 days, then you suffer those consequences. And you're right, in terms of the longer the field, the importance of the player whose profile is lesser, making that cut makes that Friday afternoon even more, it has more weight to it.
Well, and just common sense to me says more players, more competitive, less players, less competitive. I mean, it's fairly simple in my opinion.
All right, last thing, Scheffler, because he's the best player by a couple of strides, his rounds are referendums, not just the result on Sunday. Is the data telling the story of him having here that is a win, a third, a fourth, a 12th, and a 24th? What data point is the most telling?
The data point for me is his right now is his strokes gained approach.
Yep.
I mean that's, and it's interesting because when you look at his strokes gained approach and you look at how great his iron play has been over the last 2-3 years, you begin to realize how important iron play really is based on what he's done the last few tournaments with his iron play. And you're like, he's kind of smoke and mirrors, especially those weird starts that he had on the West Coast swing with those Thursday morning starts that he had. And I would say that people are starting to realize, who didn't realize it before, how important out here iron play is. It's the bulk of the strokes gain that you get on the PGA Tour is going to come from iron play, and how you set yourself up and how you make most of the birdies that you're going to make come from iron play. So iron play for me, especially with Scottie right now, that's the ironclad sticking point for me, watching him and going through what he's doing. He's just not hitting it very close. I would say his greens in regulation, he's still hitting a decent amount of greens, but he's just not giving himself the same amount of opportunities that he was, and he's hitting some very uncharacteristic short irons. This is just a thought exercise here. I don't want anybody to take this and run with it and be crazy here, but I'm just wondering how much effort he's put into making this new driver work, and if that's not affecting the rest of his golf swing. That's just a thought. So, and because as a player, you want the latest and greatest in your bag, like Scottie does. He's going to get more speed with the new driver. He's going to get this, he's going to get that. But if it doesn't fit the rest of the set exactly the way you want it, as a player, I know you're willing to make some tweaks maybe with that golf swing to make something happen that maybe shouldn't be happening. So that's the one thing that's kind of sticking out in my mind as a very loose theory of mine.
Listen, thank you. Great to see you. Look forward to watching you all week on Live From. Look forward to seeing you down there. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, there is Arron Oberholser. Those are winning words presented by Century Insurance. We come back with our picks for the players on a Getaway Monday. What a glorious thing right after this. All right, we are back in here on 5 Clubs live on Golf Channel. A reminder, Live From starting this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course, every single night and tomorrow and Wednesday, all day long, with their great team of hosts and broadcasters. This segment, final segment for us, brought to you by Peter Millar. You know, the interesting thing about Millar is that not only they have everything that you need, their fabrics for whatever season, like the sport coats that I wear, lucky enough to wear, they're always a perfect weight for the season that you're supposed to wear them in. It's Peter Millar and petermillar.com, all right? Standings for us and picks. It's an odd year, to say the least, because when Brendan DeYoung is the man out in front, not only is he not accustomed to being there, but the man who's at the bottom, who is the bona fide expert. It's about that time, Keith. Winter and your hibernation should be over. Shake it off. So Brendan, Emma, Gil makes a move with Colin Morikawa, Taylor, myself. Thank you, Tommy Fleetwood, for a very, very uninspiring performance at the API. Jay, and there is Keith. All right, with that, here are the picks for the players for the 5 Clubs team. I will play Scheffler, a 2-time winner, and it's all relative. He's still 10th in greens hit in regulation. He's 2nd in strokes gained off the tee, but he's 120th in proximity to the hole. It's the iron play. Gil goes with Cameron Young off a great week. Scheffler for Emma, who had a great debut on Golf Channel down in Puerto Rico. Russell Henley. Taylor is just loving him. Colin Morikawa for Brendan. Jay, like Nick Dougherty, thinks that Shane shakes off what happened down at PGA National, and Colin Morikawa for Keith Stewart. So, players starting on Thursday, and like I said, Live From all week long, starting this afternoon and every single night as well. This is not only the showcase event for the PGA Tour, it's one of the great sporting events because it's got everything you need. I love that hole. I hate that hole. That player has no chance. No, he should be the favorite. Enjoy Players Week, folks. We're back next Monday. Have a great week.